Welcome to a special edition of Heritage Minute Special. I'm Ted Robertson, multimedia and podcast specialist for the Air Force Academy Association of Graduates and Foundation. My guest today, Lieutenant Colonel retired Steve Simon, USAFA class of 77, and historian and writer for the Association of Graduates and Foundation as well. Searching high and low, as we love to say, for the greatest there is in terms of stories to tell about the Air Force Academy. We're going to talk today a little bit about what's coming up in 2025 for the Heritage Minute series, some changes, and more great content and stories to bring your way. We think you will just love and enjoy. Let's hop right into our conversation with Steve.
A Heritage Minute special, huh?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Okay. All right.
Steve, let's talk about your background just a little bit. You've been behind the Heritage Minute sort of project along with Ryan Hall.
Yeah.
And the two of you started this project back in when?
In 2017, I came on. I was the executive vice president of the AOG. And Ryan and then Checkpoint's editor, Jeff Holmquist, came to office one day. We have this great idea. We think we should do these little short videos. We're going to call them Heritage Minutes. I'm not sure if they have the title yet, but little Heritage videos. I said, what do you think? Yeah, great idea. Let's run with that. So who's going to do it? And they said, well, you are. so
if you spoke it, you're going to support it, right?
So between the three of us, we just kind of came up with the concept of the short for the short attention span theater kind of thing, where we would do just these little 2 to 3 minute videos of various things around the academy. The first one we did was the Gimbel Library and the special collections section of the McDermott Library. We did the planes on the Trotso, and we just kind of said, well, let's do a few of these and see how they go. I think our expectation was maybe we do 10 or 15, see how they go. So. And they took off, and we enjoyed it, and I became obsessed with it. So every time I drive anywhere, I'm looking at things, and I say, "Oh, that's a subject for Heritage Minute." So I'll draft up a script and send it in. So I think we've done some in the neighborhood of 70 so far
that are produced, but there are
produced.
kind of 100 in script.
Yeah, I've got another 30 or 35 written that hopefully we'll eventually have time to record and film. So it's been definitely a labor of love.
Very often, and one of my favorite times of the week is when you pop in and you have a guest, and you've had some incredible guests here.
Yes, we're
going to talk about some of your favorites
on the special podcast.
Yeah, I get to watch the two of you talk about things that you have in common, often shared experiences. A lot of the guests have direct connections to the Air Force Academy and understand its history. Literally, having run Falcon Trail here, that's one of the guests that we're going to talk about, somebody who's a classmate-ish of yours.
You went 1 year behind, yeah.
Right, okay. You have your own connections here from back in 77 when you tossed your hat.
Graduated in 77. I was here for the second half of the 80s. I ran the international programs. And then I ran the alumni programs from on the Hill, so as a captain and a major. So, and then from there, I was in D.C. I was fortunate; timing worked out well that I was the congressional liaison for the Air Force Academy. So I was on the air staff at first, and then they did some reorganization. I was on the Air Force Academy staff, but stationed in the Pentagon. Being essentially the eyes and ears of the Air Force Academy, anything where the Academy and Washington, D.C. intersected, whether it was a cadet writing or a cadet's parents writing to the congressman because they're getting kicked out, or budget issues. I got to do, I think, 5 trips to the White House with the Commander-in-Chief's trophy. So just a lot of really great time representing the Academy in Washington. That was a real thrill for me to do that. And then after my wife and I both retired from active duty, we found ourselves back here, and next thing I know, I'm on the Hill again. Nancy Burns, who a lot of people will remember from her days, was on the Academy staff for 47 years or so. So pulled me back, and I was the alumni liaison again. So I worked reunions and that sort of thing for many, many years. And then when I retired, I thought I retired, and then Marty Marcolongo, the previous CEO here at the AOG, asked if I'd come on and help him just for a year or two with his transition. He was brand new, and he's gone, and I'm still here 7 years later. So, and loving it, obviously.
And you kind of have talked your way through a lot of this stuff. And again, I've used the word literally a couple of times. You can use it one last time, but you have a connection to the radio station. The radio station now 53 years young.
Yes.
Kind of a laboratory and a place for cadets to learn communication and public speaking.
The broadcasting club.
It is, but the broadcast club. It is generally a cadet-run station.
Yes.
You have a program there.
Yes, well, that goes back to my cadet days. In fact, I was a DJ. I've always loved music, and as a dually back then, you had no access to music whatsoever. So the only way I could do it was to be a DJ. So that's what I did. So
you wanted music that badly during your days as a cadet. So. Your show is on Saturdays.
Saturdays from 9 to noon, and one of the things I started 615 shows or so ago is. I've always liked cover songs, like remakes, some songs done by other than the original artist. So I'd start playing one or two in my programs, and I thought there's enough material here that I can do a whole hour every week. So I started that 2007, 2008, I guess, and every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock, 60 minutes of remakes.
So Heritage Minute and Academy History touches CAFA
a
lot.
Yes.
So which came first, the CAFA or the AOG version of Heritage Minute?
This day in Academy History, I think, because I started that when I was on the Academy staff. We got called into the General's office, General Michelle Johnson, coming up on the Academy's 60th anniversary. So we need to do something that's tasteful and inexpensive that we can, promote and kind of hype the Academy's anniversary. And I said, well, why don't we just say, this day in Academy History, here's what happened. I'm sure there's a list somewhere. And turned out there was not. So there was no list. I called the history office, called the history department, checked around public affairs where I worked, and there wasn't one. So so I can write down 8 or 10 just off the top of my head. So I started doing that, and then got obsessed with that list. So what we did in the year of 2014, the last full year of the base paper, as it turned out, we'd have a full page feature every week of items this week in Air Force Academy history, going back to the Lowry days and or even before, with the legislation and that sort of thing. And then we just kind of kept that going. That's a list. In fact, I continue to compile now. It's approaching 7,000 different dates and events, and that shows up in a lot of different places. I think the Friends of the Library puts it on their website. We have it here on the website. And then Chris Kahn decided that it would probably be a good thing to do on the radio as well. So every month I prepare a series of dates that I send to him that the DJs use, and he does a little liner every day with just facts and figures about the Academy, and I'll usually throw 2 or 3 into every one of my shows. So it's a great way for listeners to learn about the Academy in small doses.
Yeah, they're little bites. We've decided, though, along the line here, we came up with Heritage Minute specials, and we were doing those once a month. We like that approach so much that we've decided to expand that to 2 times a month. That'll start in January now, and you'll be able to hear 2 longer format conversations. That's where we really get to dive into people's backgrounds and learn a little bit about the people who make the history, who record the history, who observe it, who are somehow, some way contributing to it. We have some guests in mind that we'll tell you about coming up for 2025. But let's circle back. Let's talk a little bit about some of the folks that and some of the things that might be some of your favorites.
Okay.
Let's start with Heritage Minutes, and then we'll go to Heritage Minute Specials, since that's kind of the new thing.
Well, again, I work with Ryan. We're doing a 10-episode season that will launch every February. So we're in the process of just working on different projects. Had a really good time out in Jacks Valley. And you helped with that, where we
we were literally running with cameras and microphones and trying to keep up with the column
on the march out. Several takes of my line, and so that's one of the ones I'm looking forward to seeing. But we just continue to look around the Academy to find interesting subjects, and I guess some of my favorite were, I guess some of the ones that may be a little bit harder to get, and you and I have been up there a couple times. The wreckage of the cargo plane up on Blodgett Peak. That I think is one of my very favorite episodes. We did an episode on Eagle Peak as well, which was a lot of fun. But I guess my two favorites were ones where we actually got away from the Academy, and I think if you watch one Heritage Minute, watch the Lowry Air Force Base one. That's one we put together for Founders Day. I forget what year it was, 2019, 2020 maybe, but that to me and the production value on that is amazing. There's one scene that Ryan did that kind of still gives me goosebumps. He found an aerial or maybe a satellite shot of Lowry Air Force Base when the Academy was there, late 50s. And then he found another picture of how it looks today. And he did just this little morph of old to the new. That's just, it's just phenomenal. But that's a really great episode. The other one I like, we did one in Washington, D.C. We were back for the Navy game, and we did one about the Air Force Academy activity group, which started actually back in 1947, so 8 years before the Academy was even started. General Harmon started the Office of Academy Affairs because they knew there would be an academy eventually. And again, I had the honor to work there, so it was great to go back into the Pentagon, found where my old office was, and to do an episode on that. So that's probably my personal favorite, just because I got to see and do maybe a little bit more personal stuff.
Yeah, it speaks a lot about the heart that you have for history and heritage. And plus, it's part of our charter here at the AOGN Foundation.
Absolutely.
That we tell the story.
Right.
And we talk about it in terms of all the things that make the Academy great. And yes, the preservation and now chronicling through the people that are involved in that. And it was this past November, referring back to the airplane crash site. That's a C-49. That happened in 1943.
Right.
And when I talk about searching high and low, it's probably 3,000 feet above the Academy campus on the side of Blodgett Peak. And that one is the one that's just south of Eagles Peak.
Right.
So yes, we have hiked up there a couple of times together. And there was an adventure that we had. We hauled a new flag up there because somebody had planted a flag there that was becoming a bit tattered and
weathered. Yes.
Those things become adventures and they become memories, and we want to share those with all of the people who love history and who just love to listen to the Heritage Minutes. And that leads me then to the Heritage Minute specials.
I really enjoy the feedback that I think Blodgett in particular, that I've heard from several grads that said, I went to school there, I taught there, I didn't know that was there, which that's like, to me, that's the ultimate a pat on the back that we're able to share something. Everybody knows, there's an F4 and, that shot down some eggs or whatever, there's a lot of stuff people know, but when we can find that little nugget that, I don't know, or there's a Pioneer cabin that was been here since 1870.
With graves nearby that were moved there from when the football stadium was being.
Stadium, so.
And tons of history around just the stadium. Lots of history connected to the land that the Academy is built on. Several families. Some of those will be discussed in future Heritage Minutes.
One more little hidden gem that I love that we found. If you've been in the community center, there's a bell tower with a bell in it. That bell is called the Bell of Neuville. That was in Germany or in France for 150 years before it came here. It was at Normandy. It was in Normandy on D-Day. So and it's just an unassuming bell that most people just either don't notice or, oh, cool, there's a bell. But
there are a lot of times when you talk about
stories like that around here.
Yeah, so many times when you talk about a thing, something on display, and what people should realize is that you can come to the Academy. You can come and see these things. You can come and see that bell. So if there's something in a Heritage Minute that you see, it's not hard to find if we've said that it's here on the Academy. And one of my very recent favorites of yours is the aircraft that is on display at the prep school that has a direct connection to a legendary pilot. Yes. And that is Charles Lindbergh.
Charles Lindbergh.
Talk about that just a little bit.
Okay, yeah. So the Spirit of St. Louis was, of course, Charles Lindbergh's solo flight across the Atlantic. Robinson Reisner, who became well known as a prisoner of war, 30 years to the day after that mission, he flew the same mission in the aircraft that we now have over at the prep school.
Which is an F-100.
Way faster.
It's about six hours and 30 some odd minutes.
Yeah.
About 30 times slower was prop-driven Charles Lindbergh in the Spirit of St. Louis, which is the original. This aircraft is the Spirit of St. Louis 2.
Yes.
And you can walk right up to it. You can put your hands on it and take pictures with it. You can touch this history that very often you talk about. Some of it not so easy to get to. Right. A lot of it you can just walk right up to and touch. And a lot of people just don't know. There's the Falcon that stands in front of the stadium on the east side, for example, the Belk Falcon. $400,000 at the time, and a 24-foot wingspan. There are multiples of those around. The person who donated that or funded it was a retail magnate, a department store magnate.
The Belk department store.
Exactly.
In the Southeast,
There's that, and there are tons and tons and tons more of those things. And so just to briefly sidebar here, you can get them at usafa.org/heritage hub. You can get. It's so fun to binge listen because if you get, you get onto our podcast channel, they'll just autoplay and you hear all kinds of fun stuff. And it's Ryan's brilliant production work.
Yes.
He's the one that has given this a lot of shape and form. And you, of course, as the guy that does the stand-ups. And it's just so cool to watch those. I want to talk about Heritage Minute specials.
Okay.
Something fairly new, something we wanted to experiment with because it gives you a chance to bring somebody in who cataloged our history, chronicled it, observed it, been a part of it,
participated.
It is
made the history.
We have had people sitting in the chair that I'm sitting in right now, who were part, for example, one of the pilots for Operation Homecoming in 1973, that brought all of the captured pilots home that were still alive in Hanoi, and there were 33 of those prisoners of war. They came home on those aircrafts. One of the people we worked with, his mom was one of the nurses that greeted some of those folks. You never know who you're standing next to.
Exactly.
And so it is wonderful to tell those stories. That was Jim Nance. Talk about Jim a little bit.
Okay, Jim is a class of 71, and again, he's a C-141 pilot, and he says he just happened to be assigned the flight, as you said, to Operation.
They all do the nonchalant thing, and I wish they wouldn't, because they're more special than that.
To bring back the POWs.
Yeah.
And then his hobby became sculpting, and he's been just award-winning, just amazing sculptor. And if you're around the Academy, you'll see several examples of his work. The Robin Olds statue at by the North Gate. In the Air Warrior Combat is his. He's a great one of Lance Saigon. Right here, in fact, at the Southeast Asia Pavilion, he did a relief map of Vietnam for the Southeast Asia Pavilion as well, and just so many great works of art that he's done. And again, that wasn't his career field, it wasn't his training, it's just his hobby. Then he became an expert at it, and it was really great to talk to him about that.
And in past Heritage Minutes, you've talked about Lance Saigon.
Of course.
A posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor,
Class
and
of
the
65.
only Air Force Academy graduate who has ever received that honor.
That is correct.
And so we decided we wanted to do something extra special with that particular episode. So we found the young man who was the model for the POW plaque. When the plaque was dedicated, they were all here together. Members of Lance Saigon's family, the model for the plaque, Jim Nance himself. All of these things can be found in that Heritage Minute, but it's more important, I think, to experience the pavilion itself, because it's a place of reverence and solitude, reflection, a lot of information there. And Jim Nance's sculptures bring things to life that are really quite poignant. And the one I think that strikes me the most is Lance Saigon crawling across the ground, and he is in thorns, and you read the story and the way it's depicted in bronze, down to the rats that are around his legs. And so that's one of my I think, favorite Heritage Minutes. But then you've had some real kind of lighthearted, fun jaunts through history. Talk about Dead Man's Flats, for example. That was USAFA's history guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jack Anthony, who's a class of 78. He's my go-to guy. He's if I'm the expert on the Academy's history, he's the expert on the Academy's prehistory. And by that, I mean the Academy grounds before the Academy was here. The town of Husted, which is down by the North Gate, actually not far from the new hotel. He knows all about Cathedral Rock. We did an episode that he actually appears on camera on that one, whereas there's a lot of, I guess you call it graffiti, but names carved in there from the 1880s and the 1890s. And he knows those people and their families and where they lived, and just some amazing facts and figures that he's been able to compile over the years. He was a great guest. A great friend, and I'm always interested to talk to him and share information. I think mentioned the Pioneer Cabin. He was interested or involved in that episode as well. So just a good way of this land was something before it was the Academy, obviously, and he's the one who knows and helps us tell the tale of that, which is important. Going back, we're actually back to the Native American times when.
Yeah, and again, another favorite, because a couple of nuggets that came out of that for me were about Dead Man's Flats. You guys had an interesting time discussing the story behind why it's called that.
Yeah, we're trying
back
to
in the day.
trying to have some decorum. But,
yeah.
But yeah, the cattle rustlers met. Let's say Frontier Justice was pretty immediate and rather brutal, I guess.
Right. So they left 2 human reminders in a tree that you should not rustle cattle.
Don't be that
on
guy.
These,
don't be that guy.
Yeah, don't be that guy. Then there's Ice Lake, of course, and that's one of 3. Then there were also operations where there's a special, a very desirable clay here underground. And so there were a couple of locations where there are holes that were opened up at one time where people were taking clay out for fire bricks. And it was staggering the amount of money these people were paying back in the 1800s for a lease on a hole in the ground where you went and got muddy and you got clay, but you were paying $500 a year for it back in those days. That's a lot of money. So let's talk about some future Heritage Minutes, because everybody's familiar with the Academy mascot. That's the falcon. And when I first came to the Academy and was starting to work with you and the team here, one of my favorite days was out there at what's called the Falcon Muse.
That's right,
And I watched as Ryan and Jeff Holmquist, who you mentioned, and you put a piece together on the falconry and the cadets that run and manage that.
Yeah, that was a good one. That was, I think, the one that we've had the most involvement, other than just me and maybe one other person, that we had 8 or 10 cadets that were involved. Were actually standing by, and that was a fun one also because we threw a little humor into it, as if you've seen it. So it was about the live falcons, and of course we devoted all that. But then toward the end, as I was writing that, I thought, it would be really cool. There's a mascot falcon, the cadet cheerleader, full-size dress up. It might be fun to work them into this too. So at the end, as I'm doing my walk and talk, about something about not all the falcons at the Air Force Academy are trained here at the Muse, and then as Ryan's pulling the camera back and I'm walking, then the cheerleader bird comes into view, and so I think this guy lives in the field house, and then of course he does his falcon cheerleader stuff and gets us up into the camera and that sort of thing. But that was really a lot of fun. But,
I think one of the things that comes from that for me too is that you make us and the people who listen or watch these love history, just love history in general. And then we got to give credit to David Bitton, who was there with his very long lens camera, was getting some great shots of the falcon. So you're going to see some brilliant photography, some brilliant videography, and you'll see Steve and real falcons and the not real falcon all interacting together.
Getting in my shot. So.
Any of those Heritage Minute specials that we've done to date really jump out at you from 2024, and then we'll talk about couple of things that we're going to do in 2025 we hope will be really interesting for people.
I enjoyed the interview with General Jay Kelly, class of 64. He was the head of the Falcon Foundation here for a long time, retired lieutenant general. And interestingly, he was one of the 5 cadets who founded the Air Force Academy jump program. The only one, I think, the only one maybe surviving, but it was fun we'd actually done an article a few years ago in Checkpoints about it, but it was fun to get him in and talk about his experiences working with Joel Aronoff and Pete Johnston and a couple of the other cadets who just wanted to fly, just wanted to jump. They didn't have any ulterior motives. They weren't. I guess they were renegade because they were doing something they weren't supposed to be doing, but they were. I mean, it was all pure as far as their interest in doing it, and so that was just a fun story that they just on their own time and their own dime they scrounged equipment. They'd go up to Boulder and jump.
They packed
get
their
the
own
instruction. They
parachutes.
packed their own parachutes. Did everything, and then they as they got a little bit more notoriety, they'd entered some competitions, and they entered a collegiate competition and won. So Jay Kelly and Pete Johnston, who class of 66 grad, who unfortunately died in a parachuting accident shortly before graduation, they won a trophy. And so, of course, kind of hard to keep a secret when you're a national champion. So
they got found out.
There's a funny story of the superintendent calling the commandant and saying, "Do we have a jump program at the academy?" And the commandant didn't know they did. So soon found out, and the cadets were actually a little bit concerned that they were going to be disenrolled for getting this thing going without permission. But fortunately, people took a longer range view and said, this is actually really a good thing for us, and ended up endorsing it and bringing it on board officially. And then, of course, in 1976, it became the Wings of Blue that we all know is the best parachuting program in collegiate sports, or maybe just in the U.S.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was a fun one.
Again, great stories and lots of connectivity, not only to each other, but well beyond the boundaries of the academy. Let's talk a little bit about what's happening in 2025 and why we're here together. One of the main reasons, of course, to get to know you for sure, because we don't really get to talk about the host of Heritage Minutes at all.
I appreciate this.
So, I appreciate you sharing a bit about your background, your own connections to the Academy. I'm interested, too, before we get into what we're going to do in 2025, where did you pick up your passion for this? Because you do dig deeply, and you have put together a body of work that is hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of words of facts and historical, just an incredible historical body of work and knowledge that you've got.
Yeah, it just kind of developed over time. I was a behavioral science major here, psychology, so it wasn't really, I enjoyed history, but I wasn't really that into it. When I was back here in the 80s, in the alumni office, I wrote a few pieces for Checkpoints. So I have actually bylines and Checkpoints dating back to the 80s. Then when I got to the Pentagon, representing the Academy again, I was able to write and kind of keep communication going for graduates about what was going on in D.C. And then I think probably the main impetus was that meeting with General Michelle Johnson, when she said we need to, when we brainstormed the idea of let's tell the Academy history, and discovering there wasn't one, to my disgust, actually, how could the Academy be this old and no one's ever done this before?
Yeah. But
somebody has to do it, and I was in a position to do it, and I'm glad I did. And then, as I said, that kind of became an obsession. And then coming over here as executive vice president, and then the great idea that Jeff and Ryan had to do the videos, and it just kind of kept stepping up step by step. It was kind of a gradual ability or opportunities to grow this passion and tell the stories.
So it's podcast based. It's videos that live on YouTube. Just go to at Air Force Grads on YouTube, at Air Force Grads. And there you will find our channel, and there you will find the whole series of videos, Heritage Minutes, Heritage Minute specials. If you love the little bites, they're there. If you love the longer format, it's all there. And we're going to do a little bit more of the longer format. We're going to continue to do the Heritage Minutes themselves.
Yes.
And there are a couple of pretty cool things on the list. There are folks in leadership in the city of Colorado Springs who have connections to the Air Force Academy. That was City Council President Randy Helms.
Randy Helms, yeah.
And what'd you have Randy on to talk about?
Well, there was so much to talk about. We actually, the idea to have him on was he is the president of the AOG's Class Advisory Senate, which is an organization, two-way organization for communication between the graduates and the academy. Each class has a senator, and then that person attends meetings that Randy would lead, and then the academy and the AOG feed information to the senators who disseminate it amongst their classmates, and then also solicit feedback. So, the academy and the AOG and foundation want to know what's the pulse of the grads, what are the grads thinking out there, and the Senate is a great way that they can do that. Now, you're talking to your classmate who is your class senator, and it's that person's job to solicit and bring that feedback forward. So that's why we brought Randy in, but of course he is the president of the Colorado Springs City Council now, so we got into that.
And if I did not mention that, he is a grad.
Yeah, he's a class of 79. So, in fact, he and I kind of parallel different careers, but similar locations. Of course, we were here at the same time. We were at Norton Air Force Base in San Bernardino, California. At the same time, we were back here on staff, and then we were in the Pentagon at the same time, and then now we're back here.
We talked to a couple of other people very recently who are going to be appearing. We have in mind also to bring the Academy curator of artifacts. We'd like to
get the artifact
on.
curator, Meredith Harlow, and her boss, the historian, Brian Lastly. So
there are objects in the special collection at the top of the McDermott Library that are thousands of years old.
Yeah.
So, that's another thing that you can go and experience. And if you can be in the cadet area, you can go up that circular staircase. Even that has its own history. That's also
spiral staircase.
Yes.
Oh yeah, I love the spiral staircase story. So.
But this is kind of fun for me because I don't understand how you walk around the Academy grounds and not spot 1,000 things that you can do a heritage minute on.
Yeah.
That's one of the fun things about the Academy is the history is so incredibly rich.
Looking at it. So.
Yeah. So in the second and fourth week of every month, the longer format versions of Heritage Minutes that we call Heritage Minute Specials are going to broadcast or be published. And we've already told you about a couple of them. We got other ones in the works. And then in the off weeks, we'll do Heritage Minute. Of course, you can get all of these at usafa.org/Heritage Hub, right?
Right.
You can search our social channels for announcements about them. Any of the social channels, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all these places. At Air Force Grad, the @symbol at Air Force Grads is where you find all these things. So lots of content to drop coming up in 2025.
Indeed.
And we really appreciate everybody who is listening and paying attention and giving you feedback, Steve. I know those affirmations mean everything. It means you're reaching people and touching people.
It is nice to hear, yes.
And there are some touching stories, some funny stories, some serious and tragic stories. There's everything in these Heritage Minutes and in the Heritage Minute specials. And again, I love it when we're able to talk to people like Jim Nance, who were part of history,
right,
and who now put history on display,
capture history in a different way
through his bronzes. Yeah. And guys like Jack Anthony who know everything about this place. There's lots across the spectrum and across the continuum of time to talk about more expeditions, maybe out to remote places to find things that are somehow or another connected to the Air Force and to the Academy. Final thoughts, Steve. This is a question that you ask everybody that you interview. It's my turn to ask it of you.
Well, no, I just appreciate the opportunity to talk about some of the development of the Heritage Minute concept or brand, or whatever you want to call it. It was I'm glad to be able to tell that story and maybe delve a little bit into how I got involved in history. So I appreciate the opportunity to tell that story.
Well, I appreciate you being here, and the honor and privilege of working with you and just watching you work is so fun for me. I am never not in awe of what has happened at the Academy, what is happening now, and what will happen. And we talk about all of that in Heritage Minute and Heritage Minute Specials and much more. So Heritage Minutes and Heritage Minute Specials for 2025, a new schedule. You'll be able to hear Heritage Minute Specials, the longer format conversations with great people. So that's the second and fourth week of every month. And in the off weeks, sometimes 2 a month, sometimes 3, are Heritage Minutes. And they're just going to keep getting better because there's some just absolutely fun stuff on our list. And we invite your suggestions.
Yes, please.
And you can do that by emailing us at socialmedia@usafa.org. That's socialmedia@usafa.org. Steve, anything else you want to add?
No, I just appreciate the opportunity to chat with you.
Steve Simon, USAFA class of 77, retired lieutenant colonel. You've done some great things and continue to do great things. And thank you all for listening. This has been a Heritage Minute special.